Welcome back, our dear followers and listeners and viewers, to the Vigilant Ones podcast, your favorite health and wellness podcast. As usual, my name is Jakub, and today I have with me my co founder, Mr. Ledra.
Yeah, hello. Good day to everyone. It has been a long time. I welcome you all to the Vigilant Ones podcast. My name is Ledger, once again, co-founder of Vigilant Living and a medical doctor by profession, a practitioner of holistic living and holistic health and wellness. To be precise, Vigilant Living. I'm glad to be here today, and you're all welcome to the Vigilant Ones
Yes.
podcast.
Yes, thank you for being here with us today. And for those of you who have watched the last episode or listened to it, we have discussed a lot about healthcare and how healthcare is expensive, the financial aspect, the payment, the insurance, so many topics. So please, if you have not watched, make sure to go and listen to it after hearing this one. As for today, we would like to continue, though we will go more into the healthcare systems and the institutions which run what we call as healthcare, in a sense, the delivery of healthcare services. So, however, before we proceed to such a complex and maybe a bit abstract topic, I would like to us to start with a good story to really get the emotional aspect of this topic. So I would like to ask you about your experience. Last time we talked a bit about you, but now I think we have someone in common who has really dealt with healthcare, the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is your mom. So I would like to ask you to really start with a story so that by the time we go to the topics, someone can understand really how healthcare can torture or anyone, no one is safe from the healthcare delivery in a sense.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Yako. Yeah. Yeah. My mom, where should I begin from? So she has had a rough patch this past couple of years, in regards to her health, and it's all because she had a roller coaster of uh, medical events, unfortunate diagnosis being made in her life that she had to persevere through and still strive to ensure that she continued living. On a sad note, she recently got an accident and fractured her proximal femur, that is the head of her femur, the long bone. So it was a bit challenging when we look through what we had to, in terms of the medical expenses, accessing specialists, the care, post-operative care, the psychological toll it had on her, and the process of recovery. It in itself was quite challenging, affecting her work-life balance, but above all projects, all engagements she had when it came to money generated came to a halt. And as such, all the dependents who relied on her for survival, academics, school, education as a whole, kind of had it rough. Nevertheless, by God's grace, some of us, her children, maybe in the firstborn, at least we're living independently and we're also earning a living on our own. So somehow we helped to contribute to her household and the members who still live with her, treating her, taking good care of her, uh, taking care of her home, and ensuring that she managed to recover. She hasn't fully recovered yet because we're now 2 years down the road since the incident. but the current recovery state is tremendous in comparison to where she was 2 years ago. So I'm really grateful to God. I'm grateful to you, Yako, and my other colleagues, Deo, and my siblings who contributed to all the efforts that were needed to keep her alive. But it was truly challenging to access care. And even funnily enough, even if I'm in the healthcare industry myself, and I know a lot of providers and friends within different specialties, I too found it quite challenging and difficult to easily access care. And worst of all, it was extremely expensive to receive. So no one is safe when it comes to uh, the expenses that come with specialized healthcare, and especially when it's needed to sustain life or to avert impending death. Yeah, that's what I can say in summary.
Yes, yes. Thank you for sharing with us that, and I'm grateful. Actually, she's someone who's dear to me also, and I can even say she has contributed to the formation of this company.
Bro.
Some of the experiences we had with her, the lack of that holistic care, uh, the life-wise aspect of prevention initially is really far better than cure and rehabilitation, the challenge the person goes through. So, and she's a strong person, and I can say she's really making it. But it takes a lot of will, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of support. However, really, you healthcare in a sense, or let me say, going to look for a doctor, that scenario is not something you'll even want to wish on your worst enemies because of all these challenges which you have mentioned, and even a lot which you have not even mentioned because of time and the complexities and the day-to-day, the disability which a person has to go through. So on that note, I think we can proceed to, I would say it's one of the biggest root causes of the issue with the current service delivery is the aspect of medical education, which is how we also met. You have really seen the lack of that holistic attention, the lack of treating a person as more than, let me say, a machine, a physical body, which you treat, but all the other dimensions, which we like to call vigilant living, are not catered for. So I think I will let you say a few words about medical education in a sense.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so where do I begin from when it comes to medical education? Um, Unfortunately, the current approach towards medical education, actually all over the entire world, is centered around trying to identify illnesses or trying to come up with individual unique diagnoses to help with or manage patients. And not appreciating that a human being has several systems that work in tandem, and all of them must be given significant attention for the human being's life to be sustained. And as such, being able to identify an individual illness or diagnose it doesn't mean that, yes, in the moment one can be able to avert death and improve quality of life temporarily, but inevitably, usually, other factors, other systems can lead to the reoccurrence of the same illness or some other illness, or even sometimes lead to a quick death and a quick unexpected death. So it is sad that that's how things are, but that's why we exist, and it's why we're doing what we're doing. And we're trying to create more awareness to all healthcare practitioners as well, to be able to approach individuals more holistically and not only cater for specific components. Yes, we appreciate that health has become highly specialized, but I think it has it has occurred in a counterintuitive way, in that the more specialized practitioners become, the less they ignore other contributors to all aspects regarding the health of an individual. So, in summary, one needs to first of all appreciate um, what is involved in medical education, not only in Uganda, but the entire world as a whole. So
Yes.
I will speak, let me speak for our case as Uganda. So just like in any other part of the world, it's very expensive. It's highly demanding, tedious, and requires a significant amount of time of one's life to be sacrificed and for one to become a specialist or fellow in any field. And even then, when that may not be the case, there are several cadres and specialties that exist in in the healthcare practice that one could partake of, depending on what area of interest within the medical field one would like to be involved with. On average, it usually takes a specialist between 10 to 20 years to relevantly be secure in their own practice so that they are comfortable with the fact that they'll be able to offer unique care and still remain relevant amidst the stiff competition. So, some of the broad classifications and categorizations of healthcare and health related providers include clinical staff such as doctors, clinical officers, and within the doctors, we have medical officers, specialists, super specialists, and in all these clinical disciplines, uh, the big four are the most popular. That is obstetrics and gynecology, internal medicine, surgery, and pediatrics. But if one were to specialize in these four, eventually they would have to super specialize in a particular discipline within one of them. And besides, irrespective of those, we usually have also what they call the specials or the special topics, the special subjects, such as psychiatry, ophthalmology, dermatology, radiology, dentistry, amidst others. And even on top of this, one has to go and do further fellowships within these disciplines. So if I were to count 5 to 6 years of undergraduate studies, then 1 year of internship, 2 to 3 years of practice, 3 to 4 years of postgraduate studies, that is master's, then perhaps 2 or 3 more years of fellowship or super specialty studies. The whole time comes to almost 15 years to 20 years for some specialties like neurosurgery. So that's how challenging it is and how long it takes usually for one to become a specialized provider in healthcare. But putting clinical staff aside, we also have nursing staff who, in our case, are usually engaged in a hierarchical order with respect to the education certificate they receive. That is, if they receive a certificate, a diploma, a degree, a master's, a PhD. So that's how far education goes when it comes to nursing. And even then, there is specialized nursing such as geriatric nursing, home care nursing, anesthetic nursing, uh, theater nursing, and all that. So it's quite broad. Then we also have allied health professionals such as laboratory staff, ophthalmology clinical officers, physiotherapists, biomedical engineers, rehab therapists. They are quite broad. We also have public health professionals and they are usually constituted of staff from different backgrounds of healthcare. We also have other health service care program, health service and healthcare administrators. These two also come from all different backgrounds. We have other health affiliated or support staff, such as those in procurement, accounting, and engineering. We then also have health scientists who may not
Mm.
directly offer services to patients, but indirectly contribute to healthcare. That is through scientific innovation, such as genetic engineers, genetic and molecular engineers, those scientists, those who work in laboratories, specialized laboratories such as UVRI, CPHL.
Mm.
We also have a special group called the pharmacists. They have their own associations, and even within their own practice, they have subspecialties. So healthcare is very broad, involving a
Wow.
lot of
Mm,
specialized health providers, and that's what makes it quite tricky and complicated to offer.
yes.
So imagine having all these options. One always has to pick a specialty which they can fit in. So having mentioned this, it in itself is also extremely expensive, with respect to one's own economic situation or status or the country in which they come from. So, for example, despite even this, the number of professionals produced on a yearly basis is very high. Say, like Uganda alone produces on average 1,000 doctors every year, who must be given internship placement and who must later on go out to get jobs. If not being employed by the government, they have to go into private practice. And that's not even talking about the nursing staff, the
Mm,
doctors, the pharmacists. So there are a lot of healthcare providers who are finished, who are graduating from medical schools, but it's quite challenging for them to be able to get employment, despite the fact that we have the ratio of healthcare providers to patients or to members in the population is still quite low. The available ones and those who have finished studies still find it hard to get employment. Yeah. So,
yes, yes. Okay, I think you have yes, you have really given us a good summary about the different levels of specialist and specialization. And I would like to come back to the aspect of yes, that training which is really so long, which can take up to the way you said up to 15 years for you to really become perhaps a super specialized a doctor. Even the other ones has they have their own duration. So I think the question which I would like to ask you, because from our experience in medical school, yes, all that years, let me say those 5.5 years, we have been taught a lot no knowledge about how the body works and how the body falls sick and how you treat the body. However, why is it that we have not really been given enough knowledge that's if even we're given knowledge about, let me say, concepts like nutrition, concepts like exercise, concepts like even aspect of spirituality, which as we know are really so crucial to a person. So what do you think led to the lack of that much interest and the lack of that much attention towards concepts which are to do with more of prevention than the treatment of conditions?
all right. So, these are just opinions of mine. I will not present them with absolute conviction. But personally, I think first and foremost, the time is not enough. You see, medicine is very broad and wide. 5, 6 years of undergraduate studies are usually not sufficient for one to be able to master the human body. Secondly speaking, I would assume perhaps it's intentional. Why? So that healthcare can be service delivery can be specialized, and different individuals can set up for different niches and strengths in which they feel comfortable. But irrespective of that, throughout the course of the education, throughout the course of our academic studies, and throughout the course of medical school, a proactive attention is usually not given to a holistic approach towards engaging with clients. Yes, it may be mentioned here and there with the mild snippets, but it's not given significant attention. And as such, even when we finish school and we go out to work, we really never put it into practice. The best we do is when we just encourage clients to give some sort of attention to other components of their life, such as exercise. You encourage to do exercises, um, have a balanced diet, engage in nutrition, engage in holistic nutrition and nutrition approaches. But to be able to have systematic, uh, holistic advice, it doesn't exist. So I would say the whole problem begins with the curricula in the different disciplines of healthcare provision. So, which is quite different from what we are doing, and it's actually what we are. I would say our approach is the opposite of what we are taught in medical school.
Yes, wow. Okay, that's really a powerful way of putting it. It took from us a proactive approach to look at it that way. Uh, yes, it's a really big issue. I think you can even recall when we normally had, let me say, the exams. We were preparing for exams, and they asked us about an essay. Let me say, they'll tell you talk about this such and such a disease and how you treat it. You remember what was more interesting? The first answers were you give this medicine, you give this medicine. You don't really normally even add up. Sometimes you might feel like you need to say some of these concepts down there, but even the doctors and the lecturers expected you to list the medications from top of your head and everything to do with it.
Sure.
That was literally, yes, the right answer, you know.
Exactly. We are always expected to just focus on individual problems associated with the human body and not to always consider the human body as a holistic entity that has different components that contribute to its sustenance. So that is the approach and mindset we even went out with in terms of practice, and it's what actually goes on up to date. So that's why the service offered to clients and the treatments offered to them are usually not sustained in terms of keeping them healthy, and inevitably they always have to always come back because of one other thing or the other that wasn't given attention. As I said, I don't think it's intentional, but we have been trained that way, and that is the result and effect. So sort of keeps the system running.
Yes, yes. We can proceed to, yes, you said after, let me say, a doctor or a nurse or a pharmacist, they take the training of, let me say, the academic training, they normally proceed to what's called an internship. Can you talk about what an internship is and the value
Yes.
it brings and maybe, yeah.
All right. So every country or every region has its own systems. Say like Germany, what they typically have is not an internship similar to ours, but from as early as third or fourth year, I think fifth year, you are always assigned to a senior provider with whom you who will have direct supervision over your education and practice. So you are attached to that individual. It's a form of residency, I would say, but which spans a number of years. And as such, by the time you finish the period of engagement and attachment to that individual, you are sort of somewhat complete in regards to the field or specialty you are interested in. And before you proceed on to further in your career, this individual will ensure that he assesses you, of course, with other different parameters and colleagues. Then he will hand you over onto the next level provider. So that's their system. And there's also several other systems, residency related systems that
Yes.
initiated at early as second or third year. But for us, our system, I think, is similar to the British. We study for 5, 6 years undergraduate studies. Then after that, we're supposed to proceed for a whole year of attachment at usually a government hospital with different specialists and consultants. And within this 1 year, you are supposed to rotate within the 3 or 4 major disciplines within that institution for 3 or 4 months and try to learn as much as possible from the consultants who head those departments. So once you have finished that entire year of internship, you are then considered to have had some sort of realistic practice, because you actually you actually responsible for the day-to-day management of clients and patients, and as such, you always have to give feedback to the consultant, usually on a daily basis. So through that process, you keep on learning. So after this 1 year, you are then given a certificate, a license to practice medicine on your own, either as an employee of government or within a private setting. Yeah, so
Mm,
basically that is it in summary. That's what
mm.
internship is. In our case, it's an extra year that is added onto your medical years before you actually get a practicing license as a doctor.
Okay. Yes. So the reason I brought it up was we always hear about, let me say, as we're in the field aspect of how internships of interns, I mean, how they overwork and the aspects of burnout. So I'm trying to come to the concept of why maybe people think doctors can make mistakes. Why do they make mistakes? Or why is it that they are not, let me say, perfect? The aspect of, let me say, you even mentioned there's a lot of demand compared to the supply of medics. And so how does all that play in the role of both damaging, let me say, the medical practitioner or the service provider and the service they're delivering itself?
All right. So thank you. This brings me back to what we had shared in the previous episode. As I said, there's no healthcare system or setup in our vicinity that is ideal, that is perfect, and that has conducive conditions both for the provider and the client or patient. Why? We have a lot of inadequacies in several disciplines, in several areas, all the way from medicine supply to availability of staff to reliability of the technology and equipment. The truth is that the demand, most when it comes to the public institutions, is always higher than the supply. That is in regards to healthcare providers. And as such, since interns are usually considered trainees, they they have no say in how they are deployed. So this usually brings in an opportunity of, I wouldn't want to call it exploitation, but it tends to happen. Um, let's call it exploitation. This brings in this brings in an opportunity of exploitation where the intern carries or bears all the weight of the work and the demand for the healthcare services within the department in which they are working. The consultant, yes, occasionally may be available. The other licensed healthcare providers may be available, but they will never work as tediously as the intern works, because he is expected, quote unquote, to be learning, and as such, he has no say on how he works and for how long he does so. So that's what causes burnouts and all the stress that comes with working as an intern in our setting. Yeah, it's more complex than that, but that's what I can say in summary for now.
Yes, that's good. Uh, though I will not really want to discuss, let me say, a contemporary issue. However, but we know there is always, let me say, either strikes or there's some sort of complaints from the medical practitioners, specifically the interns currently. So I would like to ask to discuss that concept further. Why is it that there's that much of an under appreciation for the medical practitioners as whole, and specifically the interns, when from your experience, you really, though you mentioned they are the backbone in a sense of the system.
Okay. So by the system, we mean the free for all system. They are the backbone of the free for all system. And actually, when we always purport to offer healthcare services to Uganda and so forth and so on, we are looking at the services offered by government to the low socioeconomic class individual who cannot pay for their own healthcare services in a private setting. And these are the individuals who are usually served by interns. And as such institutions, as I said, will never always have enough, and the conditions will never be conducive. But as earlier on said, it all comes down to priorities. Priorities. What are the priorities of the leadership of the country, or of those who make the budget? Is health a priority? Now, it's true that health as a department is usually not given sufficient amounts of funds from the budget to be able to cater for healthcare needs of Ugandans or of majority of the masses to a comfort to an unacceptable level. Why is that? Because uh, they feel that perhaps the bare minimum that is being offered at that point in time is usually sufficient. But we have all come to appreciate that it's never sufficient. Better can more can be done at higher levels of improvement. But if the leaders feel like that is what is sufficient and that's what is enough, the the layman down here and the intern and the doctor on ward has nothing to say about it. He's not the policymaker. So, having mentioned that, the insufficiency in terms of resources will always sustain such states of healthcare service delivery. But then, does it concern those who are wealthy and those who don't receive services from such settings? No, because they have the funds to receive services in a private care setting. So it doesn't really bother them. So what we truly claim as uh, allocation of resources for healthcare would be put in unkind words as allocation of resources for the poor.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. I would like to conclude that this discussion because we are. I will feel the reason why you need to touch this topic is because we talked about the vigilant living. We talked about prevention. We talked about how when you fall sick, really, yes, you might have the money, you might have the means to access healthcare. However, you really would rather not be sick to begin with. You rather try as much as possible to prevent, or even if you have it, at least to avoid it from becoming worse. So
Sure.
the system itself may not be really liable because, as you said, there's a lot of demand, there's a lot of work, but even maybe in a more administrative level, in a policy level, yes, there really needs to be more attention when it comes to prevention and let me say counseling and coaching people to live a healthy lifestyle. So the system can really take care of people who need it and not the whole society who are going through, let me say, just like what we have seen with COVID-19 in a sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say it's not that there aren't uh, health promotion and disease prevention policies and programs and strategies that are being implemented by the different stakeholders. They actually exist, but they are not sufficient. Why aren't they sufficient? Not enough resources are being allocated to that component of healthcare, which is actually our realm of expertise, preventing disease and promoting health. Huh? So that you don't have to spend when you are you don't have to spend significantly when you are actually sick, or even better, to reduce on the episodes of which you fall sick, or the numbers of those who actually fall sick. So prevention is always better than cure, and that will always be the role, the motto at a macro, at a macro and at a micro level. Prevention will always be better than cure. That's all I can say.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So I think we can take a hard left and talk back about the aspect of medical education. You mentioned after someone does the initial academic training, they go and maybe seek masters. So I would like to talk a bit about medical research, the concept of research. Now, we accepted in a sense of society that doctors are sort of a scientist. However, I would like us to really dissect that. Would I call it a myth? Assuming, let me say, every doctor is a scientist, which I would say a scientist ideally means someone who is number one up to date with the latest information, and at the same time they're always trying to upgrade their practice, or they are trying to, like as a true scientific sort of a thinking, more of a critical thinking. So
Yeah.
we can touch a bit more about that, considering you had an experience, you have worked as a research assistant, even I think a coordinator. So why is it there's more emphasis on the substance, I mean on the style of the research, than the substance or the value of the research itself?
Because it will end up being it will end up being generally counterintuitive on their behalf as individuals. So the emphasis is put on the benefits of the activity to the individual rather than on the more potential impact it could have on a general scale. Get it? So this all comes all the way back to the competitive nature of the environment. Okay, so for you to appreciate how medical research is being implemented and how less scientific it is than scientifically it would expect it to be, you need first of all appreciate the reason as to why everyone engaged, most or 99% of the individuals uh, chose to have the, the field of health as their livelihood. It's also a career or profession. The main reason we all most of us went to medicine is not because we had passion for healthcare service delivery. It's all because we looked at it as a source of income for our survival. Okay, so that will always outweigh any other principle. The individual will always look at their interests in terms of ability to earn or the work being able to take care of their livelihood as a first priority over whatever other any other principle, greater principle that caters for the majority good in terms of a scientific sense, whatever other principle that could exist. So, first of all, let me give you a brief background on the nature of the competition that exists within the field of education. So usually within the field of medicine. So usually when individuals go to medical school, they how do they pay for the education? Either they receive government sponsorship, which very few do, and going to or the majority have private sponsorship. So which is quite expensive. Then once they've done that, they usually hope to be employed after the initial graduation, depending on what one's first medical academic designation is, which is usually a certificate, a diploma, or degree, depending on the field, of course. So after that, they go for internship. And then after they have done all that, they usually hope to or try to start their own private health-related business venture or hope to be employed by government, which very few do. So most popularly, the business venture that he usually engaged in is a clinic, a private clinic, a medical center or hospital, and several times than often, a pharmacy or drug shop. So these are the most common and people and these are the most common and popular health related businesses or business ventures most individuals usually partake. That is if they have access to capital to even set this up. Now, having considered this, not all of them always survive. That is the businesses, and does make it, and does make it. So they always ensure that every client interfaced with is charged or billed exorbitantly, usually more than necessary, so that the business may remain afloat. amidst this fierce competition, even to the extent of engaging in unethical practices. And yet, despite all this, many will still fail. So this amidst several other factors thus make healthcare education very expensive, and as such, intuitively, the service. So that now brings me to even the healthcare policies that exist. There are quite many, several by government, others by other regulatory institutions. Yes, they exist, but the truth is they are not implemented. Uh, they are not implemented practically and realistically. And in the end, most of them just remain as platitudes or as documents. Yeah. First of all, you need to appreciate that the policy generation process is quite complex, involving several stakeholders. And just like you know it, whenever there are several cooks involved, the soup is always spoiled. But not only that, the policies themselves could actually be really good, but now attention is usually put in implementing them in a way that can ensure that they are achieved to 90 or 100% of what has been set out. So the policies are just in theory, but not in practice. Then now to come on to what you had mentioned about research, what are the challenges with research in medicine or in the medical field? So inevitably, yes, it is aimed at improving the science of health and the services offered in healthcare as a whole. But priority, as I said, is usually given to the immediate benefits that are attained by those engaging in the research. So, what are some of the challenges involved in research? First of all, there are several regulatory bodies. Not that it's a bad thing, okay, for them to exist to be able to regulate medical research, but it makes the process very expensive. So, when the process is very expensive, of course, the regulatory bodies themselves benefit, means the individuals involved with them. Two, implementing the study itself may have stipend requirements that involve high investments. So with high investments, whoever usually invests in some form of research, most times has unique interests and thus unique expectations in terms of results. So that in itself occasionally, frequently biases the expected or desired outcome, because there's usually a funder, and like we shall discuss later, pharmaceutical companies tend to fund several research, and many times, 90 or 99% of the time, the research most times is in favor of perhaps specific interests they have. That is, unless the fund of the research is not directly related to the products that are being studied. But that is just a small example when it comes to products. The same could apply for any other field. Nevertheless, the research process is necessary, it is important, it is good, but it doesn't always actively or immediately translate into quality. All right. So basically, having mentioned all the above, healthcare is complex with a lot of stakeholders at play, and for the average individual, they may not know how they fit in all of this. But what we must all know and come to appreciate is that in the end, the final and true commodity of trade that sustains the core of the healthcare business world is you, the human being. You are you are responsible for its growth. You exist more for it than it does for you. Nevertheless, we cannot claim that the advancements in technology in healthcare have not contributed to prolongation of life and its span. But inadvertently, we could also say that we became too reliant on it, and we are now its hostages. For for us to continue sustaining our lives, we must depend on it wholesomely for that. This has come at a cost of making life expensive to live, and above all, dreadful and painful to sustain, simply due to how much effort we must put in and how much more we must toil on a daily basis to sustain it. Yeah, so that's what I can say.
Yes, really, that is a good way of putting it. And the earlier we come to accept that healthcare as a business and it's profit generating at the end of the day, there are different stakeholders with different interests, and you really should be empowered in a sense to understand that this system out there, the healthcare system in general, yes, there's a lot of good in it. At the same time, as every system, there are inefficiencies. So the earlier you take your health and well-being to your own hands, the better you will really live a longer, more productive, and a meaningful life. And you can realize, unfortunately, because of the what they call the iron triangle, that if the healthcare is cheap and accessible, normally the quality is low. If the quality is high, it's probably expensive and maybe not inaccessible. However, as Switzerland Living, we're trying to achieve all the three by providing an affordable and accessible, because we are trying to use these technologies, the internet, social media, at the same time, really quality, holistic, uh, care, where we are trying to match all the 14 dimensions as we have discussed in the previous episodes. So you as a person should really have that ability to decide what's best for you, because the decisions you make today will probably only appear, the consequence will only appear maybe 5 years, 10 years, or even 20 years down the line. And as the body always compounds, as we started with the story of Ledra's mother, and the majority of people who are our parents who are in that generation are dealing with the consequences of probably the lifestyle, but even the healthcare system, which did not really cater for prevention, and rather the sick care. Yes.
You know, there's a saying that goes, the body always remembers.
Yes. Very true. Very true. So yes, dear listeners, please subscribe, like, share our content with your friends, family, and colleagues. And as you have heard, feel free to visit our website. From there, you can book a session, and we shall plan together on how to build a sustainable, healthy living.
True. You're all welcome, please.